Welcome back. It's 8:38. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Martin.
And joining us to go through some of the day's headlines now is the Deputy Editor of Spiked, Fraser Myers, and the writer, columnist and great friend of the channel and journalist Emma Wolfe. Thanks for joining us. Shall we start with the Hamas story? Astonishing imagery of young Emily Hand being reunited with her father, who, of course, had written her off as being dead. In fact, more than that. Yeah. He actually said he wanted her to be dead, and now we saw this.
Sorry, just to explain, he wanted her to be dead because he couldn't bear the thought of her being tortured. Taken away and tortured by terrorists. Yeah.
Thank you for picking me up on that.
Just in case people went,
because he felt it was a fate worse than death to be captured by Hamas.
Yes.
That's the context. Now she's free.
Yeah, and some of the sort of testimony coming from the hostages, among them Emily, but the adults who've been talking about what they went through before that first release, the first sway of releases on Friday night. There's a woman called Ayat Nouri who was talking about the fact that her eyes are still adjusting. They've been underground for 7 weeks. It doesn't even, because we've been talking about it so much, it doesn't feel that long. There's sort of network of tunnels, and they didn't know they were going to be released. They really weren't sure they were being taken along these tunnels, so they were kept in terrifying conditions until the very, very last minute. And
actually, Hamas did that to the rest of the world as well. They kept us hanging on there, on a very edge of a cliff, not knowing if actually everything was going to fall through yesterday, and it so easily could have. And as we can see now, there's a wonderful picture of Emily there with her dad, and he can't have even dreamed it would end like that.
And the actual footage of them being released, like we covered this live on Friday, it was just astonishing. I mean, in real time, hostages were coming out of Red Cross vehicles and getting into ambulances on World TV, Egyptian state TV, and I saw, obviously now it was Emily, a child, and I just remember saying at the time, that could be my daughter. And my daughter's 9, Emily's 9. She had her 9th birthday underground.
While she was there,
Are you actually, I mean, it actually...
What a story.
Yeah. It makes me feel extremely... it makes me want to cry when you say that.
I've been close to losing it a couple of times today, I think.
Yeah.
It's just so... It's so touching.
They didn't even know they were going to be released until they saw the Red Cross buses, until they emerged. And you just can't imagine what they went through, what the families were going through waiting.
And, of course, I mean, they wouldn't have been told any news, and if they were told anything, it would have been probably lies. So they had no idea what was happening in the world above them, actually. No idea at all whether they would live or die.
And this wonderful, brave lady who was being helped onto one of the buses by a Hamas terrorist, and she pushed his hand away.
Oh, I didn't see
I think that's brilliant.
It is an act of defiance. Do you think, Fraser, this will change the political landscape? Because there's been a huge amount of pressure from the UN, from Labour Party and so on and so forth, globally, for a ceasefire. If a ceasefire looks like this, as in...
Well, this is a kind of ceasefire that most of us can get on board with. I think the ceasefire that the UN are calling for, and what many of the sort of anti-Israel marchers are calling for, they just want Israel to give up. Don't they? That's essentially what they're calling for. Presumably, that's why they're still marching. There was, there's a big march yesterday for peace, quote unquote. Presumably, again, they want to see the end of Israel.
Well, the sort of ceasefire they're calling for does mean Israel giving up.
Yeah, essentially. And so, we've ended up with something much better, where hostages are being released. I mean, what was shocking, actually, is this is an important reminder of the sort of evil that we're dealing with in terms of Hamas. But people may have seen the statement, it's gone viral on Twitter, from Leo Varadkar, the Irish Taoiseach. And he sort of implied that she'd just been lost, as if she'd been lost in a supermarket, rather than kidnapped, taken hostage by terrorists.
It was an astonishing blunder, that.
What did he say?
He said she'd been lost, quote, lost.
Oh, Emily Hans?
Yeah.
Emily Hans was lost.
She was kidnapped by terrorists. She wasn't lost. No. He's been absolutely slated by that. I think it's had about 17 million views worldwide.
Do you think he probably didn't mean that?
I don't know what he meant. But
is it when people sort of like, when people say instead of died, they mean passed away, passed over or whatever?
Yeah. Sort of studied neutrality or something like that. But here, I can understand why governments would want to be neutral in the war, but how can you be neutral about... How can you be emotionally neutral about, terrorist acts like this?
But then
it's a war crime.
He called the people who protested about the stabbing of the children in Dublin far right. He called them criminals. He came down hard on them.
Yes, he called them lunatics.
And yet Hamas, she was lost.
Yeah.
I don't know what goes through these people's minds sometimes.
No, it is crazy.
I think that's... I just can't help thinking that may be phraseology.
Perhaps.
Do you remember after 9/11, President Bush said, we're going to catch those folks? And people in Britain thought, calling them folks, but that's what in his language.
Yeah.
But in his language, that's that's the way he spoke about people. He meant people. We'll catch those people. But it just jarred with us because we don't use folk in the same way. I'm hoping that's what Leo Varadkar.
I like your charitable soul.
Thank you.
I do think it is in line with, the way that the BBC don't refer to Hamas as
Exactly.
terrorists.
That's the problem. Language does matter here, and
does.
you need to be careful of every word, really.
Yeah.
But here we are. I mean, this is Sunday. Little Emily was released, amongst others, yesterday. We're going to be in the same situation today.
That's the thing.
Just
there are other
hoping
families.
clinging on to the edge of a cliff, hoping.
There are other families on both sides still waiting, and that's what we have to remember. They have to, they're still hoping that another terrorist, another hostage release is going to take place, and all of that. So,
and the
it
other
isn't
thing, I
over.
think, you have to be so careful the way you talk about these things. People say until the women and children are brought home, but hang on, what about the men?
Yes.
I mean, just because they're men doesn't mean that they're guilty of anything.
Any innocence,
any less
needs to be
innocent.
released.
And as the mother of grown-up young men, I would say, I mean, can you imagine how worried any family is if their menfolk are amongst the hostages?
That's right.
So it's just people who don't deserve to be in this situation.
And we spoke to James Marlowe, and he said he's recently returned from Israel, and he said a third wave of hostages are being released today, and the families will have been informed.
But they still don't know if that's...
But they're still hoping, exactly.
Yeah, they're still hoping. I mean, the deal may be scuppered.
edge.
And I wonder, Fraser, if this will apply pressure, because, I mean, Netanyahu has been adamant in his language all along. He will not stop until Hamas is completely eradicated, wiped out, fighting talk. And suddenly there's a ceasefire and there are glimmers of humanity and hope like this. Would it change things or not?
Well, we have to see how it goes. I mean, we have to see to what extent does Hamas keep to the terms of the ceasefire. I mean, the deal was looking like it was on the rocks already quite quickly.
Yeah.
I think, I don't think Israel's perspective is going to change. October the 7th changed everything from their point of view. They've realised that Hamas is not something that they could afford to accommodate any longer. And I think, public opinion in Israel is such that they would want to see the elimination of Hamas. Now, actually doing that is more easily said than done, as we know. They're very much embedded within civilian society in Gaza. So how long does that... I don't know what the objective looks like. When do you decide that Hamas has been dealt with is a question that...
But I tell you what,
open,
you take your hat off to the hostage negotiators, though, because there was this awful glitch yesterday, which I gather was Hamas saying, hang on a minute, you're not letting aid into where we want the aid let in other words, northern Gaza. And you think, oh, my goodness, no, everything's going to stop now. But clearly the negotiators were able to get them round the table again or on the phone or however they do it, and just... I don't know, bang heads together or talk some sense into them, and they managed to actually rescue that situation.
And for those who are listening on the radio, you wouldn't have seen then the pictures of the hostage pictures of those released just on the screen, coming on slow. It's really haunting.
And the other thing, do you find, though, is that the more we anticipate their release, the more human they become to us. We didn't know them, we don't know them, but now we're beginning to catch on to their names and their situations.
Yeah.
I mean, I, for one, am still worried about the lady who was 8 months pregnant when she was captured. Nobody has said there's any indication whether she's dead or alive, and she must have either had the baby or, something terrible has happened. But there's no news at the moment. I look for her name.
I know, and also the realisation that these people will go through trauma. A 9-year-old girl, the trauma that she will now have to be processing and dealing with, that kind of stuff doesn't go away. This is 7 weeks.
But she's
this
alive.
wasn't a bad day. This was 7 weeks. Yes, she's alive.
There's a lovely
and children
story.
are incredibly resilient.
Yes, I do think so. Her father said that he asked the IDF if he could please, when he was being arranged to go and meet her, if he could please bring her dog. And he said he was really surprised that they let him. Yeah. But he said, honestly, she may have trauma about why Daddy didn't come and rescue her, but she won't blame the dog. And she's very, very, she's totally bonded with the dog. And he said that dog may well play a very, very important part in her rehabilitation.
Healing dog.
And so healing dog. And the IDF said, OK, bring the dog. And I think that was just one of those lovely little human moments.
Human moments, exactly.
And when you think that those hostages, their photographs have been pulled down by people around the world, and when you see that they're real human people who just, because they're Jewish,
with families who love them.
And to tear down those posters, unforgivable.
A crime.
Anyhow.
Shall we move on to how we're all going to face -7 temperatures, Emma, over the next couple of weeks?
We are plunging into an Arctic blast. We can't have a royal story and not have a weather story, because I love weather. I love weather. And you were talking about being outdoors this week and how freezing it's going to get. It really is. But I love these details about, in the big weather stories, of course, all over the papers. But I love these stories about how southern softies, you know, apparently we turn on the heating when the temperature hasn't gone quite so low, but northerners are the toughest. And so when do you turn on the heating? Lots of people I know this year have been saying, I'm going to wait till December, I'm going to wait till December. And then this past week they've caved in and said, central heating's on.
Yeah.
I've had mine because it's so cold when we get up for this early shift.
Yeah.
It's
blooming
freezing.
mornings.
Yeah, so
it's difficult to get your leg out of bed, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Well, put your leg out and it just gets frozen straight away.
Yes,
I have my underfloor heating on in the bathroom specifically for the early shift because I just have to.
Yeah. But apparently...
So it's going to plunge to -7 this week, and then we'll have a couple of weeks of Arctic blast, and then things will become warmer and wetter.
Oh, isn't there a story somewhere as well that the bookies have now dropped the odds on a...
White Christmas.
White Christmas.
On a white Christmas, exactly.
Yeah. Now, I'm not quite sure what qualifies for a white Christmas anymore, because a lot of people up north, don't you, have white Christmases regularly. Down south, we don't very regularly, but I think that's what the story is about, that actually the snow may come into more southern climes.
Doesn't it have to fall on the BBC headquarters? Isn't that what qualifies as how they officially decide?
And then they can blame climate change.
No doubt they will. OK, what else we got?
Well, should we go for something light?
Yeah.
Because I want to know more about this kangaroo.
OK.
Who plays air
I'm dying to tell you about him.
Yes.
So this is they have a thing called the Comedy Wildlife Awards, and this year it's been won by a kangaroo playing air guitar. I really hope you're going to have a clip of it. A kangaroo playing air guitar. He's in a field. There we go. He's in a field outside Perth in Australia, and he beat off competition from an owl looking down in the dumps. That was the other comedy possible. Or an otter striking a ballerina pose.
I have seen some of these photographs, and this is a wonderful award, actually. They're obviously photographs that are taken by these very serious and brilliant wildlife photographers, but they sometimes occasionally catch an animal doing something quite weird. And the photographs are amazing. They're worth it. If you can get to the internet at some point today, have a look. Just type in the funniest wildlife photos.
He's called Jason Moore, the photographer.
They're totally brilliant, aren't they, some of these photographs? Oh,
I really like, there was a pelican who was almost doing like a reverse Snoopy, just lying down completely flat, but with his face
up in the air,
face downwards this time, in the water. But yeah.
Now, Fraser, we trailed this one earlier. The world's most stunning remote locations.
Yeah, so there's a new photography book showing some of these incredible remote locations, you know, all over the world, just stunning scenery. I guess it's hard to describe without. It's really about the pictures, really.
Hopefully, we've got a few pictures we can
got some of them.
Don't have any, apparently. That's good.
Well, you can take my word for it that they're beautiful.
There's some really remote locations on those pictures.
The problem with revealing these wonderful, secluded, remote locations like Cornish Beach is that then people go.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, they'll become Instagram hotspots.
Yes.
Yeah.
People get really annoyed when their town is voted the best town to live in.
Yes.
Because then everyone goes there.
Yes.
House prices
Go up.
Oh, I think we've got... Oh, no, I see what you mean.
Stunning,
we're sorry if you're listening on the radio, but we are showing some totally stunning photographs.
Almost like out of a fantasy comic book, some of these places. You know,
and again, that's the sheer art of the photographer. Who's able to capture those images. I don't think I'd want to go to any of these remote locations particularly.
That one was like a kind of Lord of the Rings ice chasm, wasn't it? Beautiful. Look at that.
Lovely photographs. Thank you for finding them, Mr. Rector.
Plateau-topped mountain with snow on the ridges.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
They're taken from drones or helicopters or...
I think a lot of them are probably nowadays, but you must have awfully... high-tech gadgetry to get those wide angles and everything. I've seen this story coming up quite a few times over the last days. It's about an unprecedented cosmic ray, Fraser.
Yeah, so this is an extremely high-energy ray coming from space. We don't know where, and it's been detected in Utah, and it's I think it's only one of twice we've recorded these things reaching Earth in history. The last one was in the 1990s, and it's so powerful. But we don't know what caused it. So I don't feel bad not understanding it, because the scientists are struggling to come up with explanations.
If it's called a cosmic ray, it's just sort of something that's beamed in from outer space.
So that's a picture of it on the screen there. If you can't see it at home, it looks like a sort of faceted lightning rod.
Yes, and that may well be sort of what it is. I don't know.
But it's, I mean, you know, millions or trillions of times more powerful than lightning.
You wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of it, would you?
I think by the time it reaches us, I mean, it comes from, you know, beyond our own galaxy. So by the time it reaches us, you're not going to get electrocuted by it or anything like that.
And is it just there once? Was it captured, or is it beaming down every night?
It's captured by instruments. So, you know, I think that was an artist's mock-up of what it might look like.
They've detected a ray.
They've detected it, yeah. So people didn't see this giant thing. Horrifying lightning coming into the sky, and I think.
Well, have you seen the full moon though recently? It's kind of lots of people have been sort of tracking this. Me and my 3-year-old were looking out of the window. We've been watching. It was too cloudy earlier in the week, but we've been watching this half moon, and I was explaining about last night. It was amazing, and there was a halo around it. And often in London, in the middle of London, you don't see that. And also the very bright star next to it is Jupiter. Worth watching out for.
Okay. We've got to call it an end there. Thank you very much, both. We'll see you again in a couple of moments.